Καλησπέρα. Λέμε καλησπέρα πια. Καλωσορίζουμε τον Igor Pedron από τον Pedron Caffe, που έρχεται από τη Medinian Trade και ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ για όλη τη βοήθεια για το συντονισμό αυτής της ομιλίας. Ο Igor θα μας μιλήσει για το καβούρδισμα του Ιταλικού Espresso, που έχει τις δικές του ιδιαιτερότητες. So, if you please, you can start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome, guys. Good afternoon. As you know, my name is Igor Pedron, and I am the second generation of roasters from Padova in Italy. Today we're going to talk about the Italian espresso, how we blend it, how we roast it, busting some myth maybe, and we discuss a bit together. So we start from one thing that maybe not everyone is clear, and that the fact that there's no one only kind of Italian espresso. Of course, Italy has various regions, and each region has a different approach to what is the espresso. Basically, we can divide it in three main kind of Italian espresso. The one that came from the south of Italy, which is roasted with a high quantity of Robusta and roasted past the second crack, which means that the coffee tends to be quite dark and have a heavy body, doesn't have acidity, and the bitterness is quite present there, which for some customers, it's something that we really appreciate. It's not for everyone, but there's a lot of roasters there, and they are appreciated all around the world for that kind of particular coffee. When we move to the central of Italy, we have another kind of product, which has a larger percentage of Arabica, and it's roasted at the second crack. They don't go over the second crack. That means you get oil on your beans, and maybe you can still have this bittersweet taste, and the body is still, of course, very, very heavy. When we go to the Northeast Italian, well, here is quite different because, well, there is a huge big brand that maybe you know from Northeast of Italy, I would say it's Italy, that of course, it works with 100% Arabica blend, and so the taste of this part of Italy, where I come from, is a bit different from the other parts of the Italy. And in my area, of course, the maximum amount of Robusta allowed from the customers is around 20%, and the roasting is stopped before the second crack. So the acidity in this case is present. Of course, nowadays, the things has changed a bit around the world of coffee because now we have specialty coffee, we have light roast, but more than that, we have coffee machines that are able to extract this kind of light roasted coffee, which wasn't available 20 years ago. So when we talk about Italian espresso, we have to think about it something that was developed 40, 50 years ago when the technology to extract the coffee was different. And so also, the roasting degrees was thinking for this kind of period. And that's why also Italian roasters are going lighter and lighter a bit, focusing more, of course, with Arabica. But it is still a long path, of course, and still remains a lot of people that love Robusta coffee and heavy body coffee, okay? So this is what we think are the key of a high-quality Italian espresso blend. So first of all, why we blend the coffee? We blend the coffee because we want that the mix of the origins together is better than the single origin that is compound the blend. So, and when we talk about espresso, of course, you have to think about that espresso is a concentrated beverage. So what it can be excellent in a filter coffee, in espresso, it will be too much, like acidity that is very pleasant in a filter coffee. When converted to espresso, it results in an unbalanced cup. So what we are looking for when we make an high-quality Italian espresso blend is a balanced coffee, where acidity is not prevailing all the other characteristics. So we are looking for a low acidity, for a full body, so the thickness is still some features that we are looking for, a good sweetness, a pleasant aftertaste, and more than all, also the consistency, because we blend also for the consistency to have a coffee that tastes the same during the year. And that's one of the other key features of the blending. So now we see this is how a classic high-quality Italian espresso blend is built. So we start, of course, with a natural Arabica. Natural Arabica, clearly, most of the natural Arabica is from Brazil, okay? And, of course, Brazil is the major producer of green coffee in the world. I'm talking about Arabica. And why we use natural Arabica as a base? Basically because natural Arabica, as is dried in the whole cherry, will have more soluble solid available that lead to a stronger body. So it's a perfect base to create a blend. And also, it produces more crema. And more than this, it also has a more shelf life during the year. So that's why we use Brazilian coffee usually as a base for Italian espresso blend. I would say that 95% of the Italian espresso blend has Brazil as a base, okay? And another really important part is the washed Arabica. What they give the washed Arabica to the blend? They will give you acidity, which leads to complexity. They give you taste, aftertaste. And of course, not all the washed Arabica are perfect for the espresso. And then again, we come back to what I said before. Espresso is a concentration of the flavor. And so, for example, Kenyan coffee, which are excellent in filter, they result in something overpowering the blend when you put it inside. And so the best washed Arabica for Italian espresso came usually from Central America. So the Guatemala, Salvador are excellent because they are the most balanced of the Central America. They are available with a consistency during all the crop, and they lead to taste that we know as chocolate, nuts, which doesn't mean all the coffee from Salvador or Guatemala tastes like nuts and chocolate. We have extremely fruity coffee coming from Guatemala and El Salvador, especially nowadays that the producers has changed the way to dry the coffee and experimented with fermentation in different aspects. So, but the classic washed Arabica of bourbon varietals, it's perfect for adding complexity and sweetness to an Italian espresso blend. And then, of course, we have the Robusta, which, of course, in the last years, the Robusta has been treated like something absolutely no good to drink as coffee. First of all, because the quantity of good and clean Robusta, it's really limited. I mean, it's more easy to find a washed high-grade Ethiopia than a high-level Robusta. And we just see in the last, I would say, couple of years, there's also the Coffee Quality Institute is bringing back the fact that there is quality Robusta, and they develop the protocols to cup the fine-grade Robusta, they call it, okay? Okay, in this case, Italy has a strong advantage because the use of large amount of Robusta from all the roasters in Italy, and this during the year created connection with the producer, especially with Indian producer. And so we have access to very high level washed Robusta from India. And this washed Robusta from India doesn't have the typical taste that maybe we can associate with Robusta, like rubber, woody. Those flavors are not of the Robusta, but are from bad processing of the cherry and the drying of the cherry. So when the coffee cherry of Robusta is processed properly, give you a very clean taste, an extremely full body, and really deep chocolate notes. And in an espresso blend, Italian espresso blend, it's almost mandatory. And you have to think another reason. In Italy, it's different from the other country. We drink straight espresso, 25 ml without sugar. So this means that if the coffee is not balanced on the acidity way, the people will not like it. And that's why using Robusta increase the body and reduce the acidity. And of course, tend to us to have a more balanced cup. So this is not, of course, valid for all the Italian espresso blend that you find, but this, of course, is like one of the major ways to start to producing an Italian espresso blend. And you can also see about this, okay? This is the data that we have from importing of green coffee in Italy. As you can see, of course, Brazilian, which is the base of all the espresso blend, is first with more than 55% are from there. And the second is India Arabica, which is an origin that is not very used around the world. Most of the high quality India Arabica is important to Italy. Why? India has very characteristic flavors. First of all, the varietals is a Catimor derived. So these tend to the coffee to have a more pronunciated body. Of course, if you roast Catimor varietals, some of them have tried some Castillo from Colombia, very, very light roasted, they have noticed these herbal notes there. When you roast it a bit more, these herbal notes are not anymore present and lead you to a very full body and low acidity Arabica coffee, which is very rare to find in all the countries who produce green coffee. And then, as you see the path, because we have the Central America and the South America, because some roasters prefer to use and spend more money also Central American coffee. More industrial roaster, we prefer to use Colombian coffee, which usually, if we talk to commercial or entry-level specialty coffee grade, are cheaper than the Central America. And you can see that Africa, so Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, represent a very small portion of that. Why? Because it's very complicated to blend coffee and adding African's coffee. I'm sorry, okay, I didn't get you. Yeah, it's very complicated, I was saying, to blend African coffee together with the other origins because they have this juicy and extremely high quality acidity, but that doesn't match very well with the other origin, if not in such particular way. It's not easy, it's really complex. Another key factor that when we talk about the consistency of the Italian espresso blend is this one. I suppose that most of you have heard about the myth that the more origin you put inside a blend, the more the coffee will be nice, it will be fine, because there is 9 origins. My blend has 9 origins. Well, this is quite a crazy thing, because if you think when you're putting an espresso shot on your grinders, let's say that you will need around 60 beans for making an espresso of 8 grams, okay? So the possibility that your 60 beans are exactly what you think in the beginning of your blend is almost impossible. And what happened that the more beans you add, let's start to see, if you put the 30%, let's say, of Guatemala, you have only the 10% that this coffee is represented actually on your shot. The more you increase the percentage inside of the blend, let's go to the opposite, 50%. If you put 50% of Guatemala in your blend, you have 75% of chance that you get this coffee in your actual shot. So ideally, blend should be composed not by more than 3 origins. When you add too much coffee on your blends, the possibility to have all that coffee inside your shots reduce it quite a lot. So this is a key to consistency, because if you want that your espresso tastes the same shot by shot, you have to reduce the amount of origin inside, which leads you to another problem. So you need to find more coffee of the same kind during the year. So, and it makes it more difficult to replace that origin if you can find it. So industrial roasters like what I call it, to use a lot of origin, because this is easy to replace. I don't find good Guatemala, I will buy a good Salvador, a good Honduras. Guatemala is too expensive, I will go with an Honduras, let's say. It's much harder to get 3 blend, 2 origin, 3 origin, 4 origin maximum blend, but lead you to a more consistency taste, which I think is very important for the customers, because when you go to a coffee shop, you want that your coffee, your blend tastes the same during the year, during the day, and during the different shots. Then, of course, we have a lot of other things to take care of, grinding and all this kind of stuff, but I left it here, sorry. And then we come to the roasting. There's a lot of, again, in the last years, I heard a lot of people say, oh, Italian, yeah, you dark roast the coffee, you burned, your coffee tastes like charcoal. But it's not Italian roasting. This is just industrial Italian roasting, which is a different thing. Not all the Italian roasters get coffee that is dark, oily, rancid, stale, and old. But who were the first roaster to come out to Italy? The big company. And the big company, with competitive price, create the export market and export also the idea of espresso around the world. Without them, there's no espresso, without the big industry. So, and this company that have very, very old roaster use the traditional way of roasting. So you can see this is a traditional drum roasters that have the burners, so the heat source is under the drum. It's very difficult to control properly with an old drum roasters machine the heat transfer, okay? This kind of machine brings a lot of body to the coffee because the heat is transferred to the beans through conductions. But nowadays, the modern drum machine have heavy burner, they are fast, you can control it, but in the past, this wasn't available. And so the timing of roasting was very long, leading to baked coffee without acidity. So this is what maybe someone, when refers to classic Italian roasting, is referring to this kind of old roasting machine. And they are still there. Many, many companies in Italy use it, but not only in Italy. Also in Germany, like Probot is still producing machine like this one for the small unit. Nowadays, in Italy, most of the company that has it caring about the quality is moved to air roasting, which means we don't have anymore a fire under the drum, but we have hot air passing through the drums. And this leads to a more consistent roasting, first of all, and allowed you also to pre-blend the roast. Because I'm sure that you heard about the fact that you need to roast each origin and then blending to reach the highest quality. This, of course, is not like, I would say it's argumentable. I mean, because roasting different origins and then blending together means that sometimes you have a coffee that has different age inside your blend. Because not all the origins has the same turnover. And so maybe you have very fresh Brazil blended with a not so very fresh Central American coffee. If you pre-blend your roasting, your green coffee, you will have a coffee that has all the same age. And this is a key factor when you're controlling also the shelf life of the products. Secondly, using air roasting lead to a more consistent roast. Why? If your fire is under the drum, that means that a part of the drum is always more hot than the other parts. Like the fire is here there is no fire, that means here is hotter than there. With hot air, the air is passing through the drum all in the same moment. And this, of course, leads to a more homogeneous roast and lets you roast coffee from different origin together with an homogeneous roast. Of course, to roast different origin together, you need to select your beans carefully. I mean, you need to use similar varietals, you need to have coffee with similar density and similar percentage of humidity. You can't pre-blend a coffee that is 2 years old with a super fresh crop just arrived because they have different humidity. And so it's almost impossible in that case to have an homogeneous roast. But if you use similar varietals, similar density, and similar humidity or water activity, whatever you like to measure, it depends on you, you will get a perfectly homogeneous roast. And so this was a big change, and because it lets you to control easier the roast, especially when you are producing a lot of batches one by one. because, of course, it really depends on the dimension of the roasting company. If you are roasting 3 batches per day, okay, you can control everything. If you are roast 100 batches per day, this is a totally different story, of course. And yeah, I think that many of you know this kind of thing, you know. When you talk to Italian roasting, some people in some part of the world will refer to the last one, okay, which is basically charcoal roasting. I repeat myself again, this is not what is the real Italian roasting. The real Italian roasting, especially in my part of Italy, is around 15 minutes roasting, okay, with what is called monk tunic. That's what my father told me when I come to the company. So we roast at monk tunic level. At that time, there wasn't available a colorimeter or something like that. But still, color in coffee roasting has a big impact. I mean, more than development time, more than all this new trendy stuff, color in coffee roasting is still king. And so we have a coffee that is dry, maximum you have few drops of oils, and you can see 15 minutes is what we call Northeast Italian roasting. Then you have the central, let's say. Of course, yeah, there's some roasting in Naples that's still doing the heavily dark roasted, and still there's a lot of people who like it. So don't blame these guys because they like bitterness. It's there. There's a part of the market also for them. It's not the whole stories, but it's a part also of the stories. Yeah, and this is like an example of how we roast our coffee. So as you can see, we have a total roasting times of around 15 minutes, okay? We have a quite long turning point, okay? And we do not go very, very fast in the first part because we think that the drying phase, when you have especially a lot of natural in your blend, has to be done quite slowly to let the coffee is not so dense. If the major part of your blend is made by a natural Brazilian coffee that is grown around 1,000 meters, of course, you can't accelerate too much this phase, okay? At least that's what we think. So we go quite slow there, and then slowly reducing the amount of energy, like whatever specialty coffee roaster we do today with single origins coffee. So there's not huge difference. There's something that was done even 15 years ago, reducing the gas during, then create a low and smooth rate of rise. It's something that was already done. There wasn't cropsters or other tracking method system, but real roasters in the past still was doing that, of course. And the development time, it's something that, for example, here we not even sign it because it's a replication of roasting. It's something that we don't do very often. I mean, we look still the colors of the coffee. I mean, we know that around 204, 205 degrees, we are close to that because development, it's not something that is, in my opinion, absolutely something sure. I mean, referring to a percentage, the percentage is different depending on the amount of time you use to reach that point. So we prefer to use the time after the crack to understand how to develop the coffee instead of the time, the percentage of development, okay? I'm done. So if you have any question, guys, I try to be very quick and give you the essential. Fine?
Thank you so much. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.